everybody! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. Today it's time for another pocket pet. So let's peek into the pocket and see who pops out. Hello, kitty. It is a Hello Kitty version of a pocket pet. And I love Hello Kitty a lot. And I know there are Hello Kitty fans out there as well. So I didn't do just one Hello Kitty version today. I did two. This is Punk Rocker Hello Kitty, or Rocker Hello Kitty, or Hello Rocker Kitty, however you want to say it. She's extremely cool, has a little star deco on her forehead, and a tutu. And that is kind of the only difference between these two little Hello Kitties. So you can make yourself a regular Hello Kitty, a rocker Hello Kitty, or both Hello Kitties like I did, because they're both super cute! So let's head to the craft table and get our kitty on. In order to make Hello Kitty or Rocker Hello Kitty, you need essentially the same things. The only difference for Hello Rocker Kitty is she's in different colors, has a star button, or you can use a star bead if you've got one, and she's got a little ribbon tutu. You need worsted weight acrylic yarn, size 4. This is 4-ply, and you do not need very much, just small scrap amounts. I've got some leftover balls. In order to make regular Hello Kitty, you need pink and white, and I made her bow in red, but you can make it in pink. For Hello Rocker Kitty, you need purple and white, and you need some embroidery floss, a little bit of black for most of her features, and a little yellow for her nose. You need an embroidery needle, or a needle with an eye large enough that you can get the embroidery floss through it. You also need a regular yarn needle, pair of scissors. You need a G6 or a 4.25 millimeter hook. That's my favorite amigurumi hook. You need 2 black buttons for her eyes. And if you're making a Hello Rocker Kitty, you need that star button or star bead and some ribbon. Now this ribbon is about 1 inch wide. You don't want ribbon that's any longer or any wider than that. And you only need 3.5 times the measurement of her midsection. So what you're going to do is you're going to make your stuffed little kitty, and then you're going to measure her midsection and multiply that measurement by 3.5 times, and that's how much ribbon you're going to need. So not very much. Certainly a meter would be more than sufficient to make 2 tutus for your little Hello Kitties. And once you've got all of those things assembled, we can get started. We're going to begin with the white. So whichever kitty you're making, you need your white yarn first. We're going to make a cinch circle. And if you've made the other pocket pets with me, you know this part. We are going to start by single crocheting 8. So 8 single crochets into that cinch circle. 8. Once you've got 8 single crochets into your cinch circle, give it a nice tight tug, cinch it shut. And we're working in the round, so we're going to continue working into that first cinch or first single crochet we made. It's always a little tight, so just stick your hook in there. And we're going to work 2 single crochets into each stitch all the way around. So that's 2 single crochets into each stitch. That will give us a total of 16 stitches at the end of row 2. At the end of row 2, you will have 16 single crochets all the way around. We've got one more row of increase to do. We're going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. 1, 2, 1 single crochet into the next, and then 2, and 1, and you're going to work 2, 1, 2, 1 all the way around, and at the end of row 3 you will have 24 single crochets in your circle. Once you've reached the end of row 3, you'll have 24 single crochets all the way around. This is 3 rows so far. We want to work white single crochets, so you're going to single crochet all the way around, still using your white yarn, until you've reached the end of row 7. So just straight single crochet for the next 4 rows, and at the end of row 7, we're going to change colors. All right, that is 7 rows in total. Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the last 4 rows are just straight single crochet. You'll still have 24 stitches all the way around. And once you've reached the end of row 7, and you can tell you're at the end, there is my little bump where row 1 turned into row 2. And I track directly up the side, and that's where my last stitch is placed. You're going to slip stitch into the next stitch, snip your yarn. You don't need much of a tail, you're just fastening off. Pull that through that loop and give it a nice tight tug. And just tuck it into the inside of your amigurumi. It doesn't need to be woven in unless you feel that it's going to stick out on you. So just tuck it away and grab your next color. And I'm making a Hello Rocker Kitty here. So you're going to start now with a slip knot. So we're done with cinch circles for now. Create a slip knot. Make sure it runs back and forth on your hook. Pick up your amigurumi, and right where you fastened off, so you see you slip stitch to fasten off, right into the very next single crochet. That's where you're going to join. And I like to join with a single crochet. There we go. And now you're just going to single crochet in each stitch all the way around for another 4 rows. So that's 4 more rows. This will be 11 rows in total from your very first row down to the bottom. So 4 more rows in whichever color you've chosen, whether it's pink or purple. And we'll move on to the bottom. Alright, I've done 4 rows in purple now, and I've just worked around and around and around, working into the first one I made, around and around. You can see there's a little bit of a jog where each row starts, and we're just going to fasten off by slip stitching into the next stitch. And same thing as before, just snip your yarn, doesn't have to be long. You're not doing any sewing with these. There we go. And fasten off. You can do the same thing with this tail. You can just stick it inside, boom, fold it in there, and or you can weave it in if you feel that makes it more secure. And there's the top part done. The bottom is the same color as the bottom of your skirt, so I'm using purple still. We're going to start with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So chain of 7. You're going to single crochet into that second chain from the hook, so not the first one, the second one. Single crochet into that second chain 4 times. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Single crochet once into each of the next 4 chains. And single crochet 4 times into the last chain. 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're rounding the corner. We're working back along the bottom of the chain row now. You're going to work a single crochet, so 1 single crochet into each of those 4 bottoms, and that will take you right back to your first single crochet. Ta-da! There it is. You're going to slip stitch to it to join your row. So you'll have something that looks like this. And now we need to put on row 2. Chain 1. Single crochet into that same stitch that you joined in, and do it once more. So 2 single crochet into that same joining stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, 2 single crochet into the next stitch, and 2 single crochet into the next stitch. So you've worked 2 single crochet into each of those 4 single crochets that were on the edge. You're going to single crochet once into the next 4, And now we're at the curve again. You're going to single crochet 2 times into each of these 4 single crochets. So twice, 2 single crochet into each of the next 4. There we go. And you should have 4 left. Just single crochet once into each of those 4. And that brings you back to your first single crochet in that row. You're just going to identify it and join with a slip stitch. We're finished the bottom. This time you can leave yourself a nice long tail for sewing. And fasten off. Now, you can stuff your body. Stuff your body with whatever stuffing you want. You can use polyester fiberfill or recycled socks. And then sew your bottom on using this long tail that you left behind. Once we've got our bodies put together, we need to make its arms. So I've already gone ahead and made one. The arms are small. They look like this when they're finally sewn on. You don't need any stuffing for the arms. You're just going to grab your white yarn, because the arms are the same color as the fur of our Hello Kitty. We're going to start with a cinch circle. And we're going to single crochet 5 single crochet into the circle. 1, 5. Cinch it shut. Identify your first single crochet and put your hook through it. We're working directly into it because we're still working in the round. We are going to work 2 more rows of single crochet, 1 into each stitch. So no increasing, no decreasing. This is kind of tight work, so take your time. Make sure you're getting the right stitch. So you want to identify the next stitch. It's a little tight and it's going to feel a bit funny, but just try to keep sort of squeezing it into a hollow tube, and then it'll be a little easier to work. Sometimes it's not always easy when you're working this small to figure out how many rows you've worked. So what you want to do is basically see your bottom and try and see at least 2 more rows above it. So I needed 1 extra there. So there's my bottom, there's my second row, there's my third row. I've definitely got enough around. So I'm going to slip stitch into my next stitch, and I'm going to fasten off with a long tail because I need it for sewing. And that's it. So go ahead and make a second one of those. You want 2 little arms. So that's a cinch circle with 5 single crochets in it. Don't join with a slip stitch, just keep working around and around and do 2 more straight rows of single crochet. You want it to be 3 rows in total. And you will still have 5 single crochet around the top when you're done. Next, we want to make her ears. Her ears are nice and thick and white. They don't have sort of an inside color. So we're going to make the ears, and I've gone ahead and I've made one already, a little differently than we've done other ears before. Grab your white yarn and make a slip knot. And now we're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you have a chain of 7, kind of like if we were doing the bottom again. Skip the first chain from the hook. You're working into the second chain. You're going to slip stitch into that chain. You're going to single crochet into the next chain. You're going to half double crochet into the next chain. Remember, half double crochet is you wrap your yarn, go through the chain, grab your yarn and pull up a loop so you've got 3 loops on your hook, wrap again and pull back through everything. That's a half double crochet. You're going to go ahead and work another one into the very next chain. Single crochet into the next, and we're going to finish with a slip stitch. So slip stitch into that last chain. Now, it doesn't look much like an ear, does it? Or does it? You're going to fold the two tiny points together, just like that. Ignore your short tail, take your hook and push it through the top loop of the sort of the point of where you started, and you're going to slip stitch. So pull that yarn through both ends, and that's it. We're going to cut a long tail, quite a long tail in fact. Snip it, fasten off, so pull it back through that loop, and you'll have something that looks like this. So ignore your short tail, or you can just sort of stuff it in between the two triangular sides, and you should have something that looks like this. Now it might not be perfect on both sides, don't worry about it. We're going to make it look like a nice fat triangular ear. So grab your yarn needle and thread up that long tail, and we're going to make a little ear magic here. Your tail comes out at the top, so pinch your sides together. You can tuck that short tail in between them. It can act like a little bit of stuffing. And you're just going to sew together these two sides all the way down. There should be like 3 stitches, 3 little pairs of stitches that you can pick up and run your yarn needle through. Yeah, that's one side. Now you can just tuck it in and push it through to the other side. It's not very wide, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Because it's all the same color, you're really not going to see it. Try and keep that short tail tucked in between the middle pieces. There. Haha. And now you can just slip stitch, or I should say whip stitch. slip your needle between the stitches and whip stitch up the side, the other side of the ear. And it doesn't have to be tidy, it can be messy, it doesn't matter. All you're going for here is this nice triangular shape. What I like to do is take my needle, put it through the very top, and do my last stitch kind of up. So you're sort of pulling up on that top little peak. That gives you a pretty decent looking triangle. Take your needle now, and one side or the other, doesn't matter, stick it in between, so into the middle, so it's not poking out. Run it down between the two, out sort of the bottom corner, and pull that tail down. Don't pull too tight because you don't want to pull your little peak out of alignment. Just pull it down. So now you're ready to sew your earpiece onto the head of your amigurumi. And look at that! It's like this cute little triangular, thick, white ear. Go ahead and make 2, because obviously you want to have 2 ears on your Hello Kitty. And we'll move on from there. We're going to go ahead and make Hello Kitty's tail next. The tail's pretty easy. It's the same as the regular pocket pet kitty. So you're going to take your white yarn again. You're going to create a slip knot. There you go. And this is pretty important. You want to make sure you've picked a front or a back. So this is where my yarn kind of switches color, and that's where my knot for the bottom is. So this is going to be my back. This is my front. This is my back. I'm going to pick a stitch or a couple of stitches. I'm going to stick my hook in here right between the bottom row. There we go. That's good. Right at the bottom row, just before the actual bottom piece, and I'm going to sort of join my white yarn with a slip stitch. So right through, just pick it up right on the outside, and I'm going to chain 22. 1, 2, 3, 21, 22. All right. That's a long chain. We're going to half double crochet. So we're going to skip the first 2 chains from the hook. So there they are. We're going to skip them. We're going to half double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. And if you've done the original Pocket Pet Kitty with me, this is all very familiar. We're going to half double crochet into each chain all the way back to Kitty. Now Kitty's heavy and she's dangling on the bottom of her tail chain here. So remember, you don't want your tail chain to twist. Try to keep your fingers on it so that you pick up the next chain on the right side as you work down. It's going to get a little tricky the closer you get back to the kitty. And if you need to rest it on your workspace, then you can go ahead and do that. So half double crochet into each chain all the way back. That chain 2 at the beginning counts as a half double crochet, so you will have 21 stitches in the length of your tail. That's not really important. What you're doing here is just creating a nice long tail for your kitty, and it will naturally do a little bit of curling. So no stress, no fret. Don't worry if it's not perfectly 21 or 20 stitches long. All you want is an even looking half double crocheted length all the way back to kitty. Once you're back to kitty, make sure you get that last chain. It'll be kind of tight, but make sure you get it. So you want your tail to butt up against the back of your cat as neatly as possible. Then you're going to turn your cat so that you're looking at it upside down again, and you're going to pick a stitch that's about 1 row up from where you cast on and do the same thing. So just pick up sort of the top part of that stitch. Come on. I like to get at least 2 loops because I feel that that makes it a strong connection. There we go. And slip stitch. Just slip stitch right through everything. There. Snip your yarn. You don't need much of a tail. Fasten off. And I like to knot my 2 ends together. So I like to tie a nice tight knot between them, and then I take both my ends and I weave them back into the body. And there's her tail. Next we're going to sew on her arms. So grab your first arm and thread up the tail on your knitting, or your, I should say your yarn needle. And you're going to pinch the ends together. And I like to just bring my yarn through to the front. Then pick up your amigurumi, decide where you want your arms. I like my arms to sit just a little bit forward of the middle. And then pick a spot and pick up a couple of stitches across the front. And I like to put it through my arm at the same time. Just go ahead, sew on your 2 arms. Remember that if this is for a little person, you want to take time to make sure that your arms are on nice and snugly, because you don't want any little body parts coming off during hard play. But make sure it's on pretty snug, and double stitch for little people. That's my only rule for amigurumi. So go ahead, put on your 2 arms, and then we'll do the ears. Remember my little trick when you're putting on your arms and you're finished sewing one on. Always take your hook and the rest of your yarn, or I should say your needle, and bring it out through a common little sort of space in the back. Bring both of your sort of sewing threads through that same place, and then you can knot them together and weave them back into the body. And this keeps all of your knots on the inside of your stuffed toy and off the front, so that you don't have them sort of interrupting the look of your little stuffed toy. So that's a good little trick. Next we do the ears. So thread up an ear with your yarn needle, and remember we've pulled the yarn, the sort of sewing yarn we had, down through the bottom corner, so one of the corners. Put your ears on your little cat and decide where you like them. I like to sort of sit mine on either side of that first round. I think that's a nice divider. And then all I do is just run my needle underneath a stitch or a space between stitches to start. Getting that first stitch in is sometimes the most difficult. But once it's there, now you've got a little more play, and then you just work back and forth. Make sure you go through the entire thickness of the little ear that you made. And don't worry, you're using all the same color, so your stitches really aren't going to show. And just keep making sure that it sits properly on your kitty where you want it. And once you're finished, do like you did with the arms. Bring both sewing tails through a common space in the back of your little cat, knot them together, and weave them into the rest of the body. Now for the tiny little details. So we're going to make her bow next. And again, you want your colored yarn. So whether you're using pink or purple or even red, if you're making a red bow for your Hello Kitty, we're going to start with a slip knot. I'll bring her on camera, and her too. There we go. So start with a slip knot. We're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 chains. We're going to skip the first chain from the hook. We're going to single crochet into the second chain, and in each across, and that will give us 4 stitches in our first row. So 4 single crochet, chain 1, turn your work, single crochet into each stitch all the way back. You'll have 4 stitches in your second row. Don't forget that last one is always a bit funny. Chain 1, turn your work, and single crochet into each stitch all the way back. So you'll have 4 single crochet in your third row. Chain 1, flip your work upside down and fold it in half. You're going to tuck your little short tail in between your 2 edges if you can. Sort of stuff it in there. You're going to take your hook, slip it through that first stitch and the corresponding bottom of a stitch on the other side. So if you can only pick up, it's a bit tricky. There we go. There we go. Now you're going to single crochet, and you're going to single crochet into the next stitch, next set of stitches. And when you're working this small, sometimes it's a little bit finagly. So remember to be patient with yourself. You should have 4 single crochet across the 4 sets of stitches, because what you're doing is you're basically single crocheting the 2 sides together, and it is not the easiest little maneuver. There we go. 4. Chain 1. Single crochet through both sides, doesn't matter, just stick your hook through and single crochet. Single crochet through the top piece. Okay, so now you're looking at this folded part. You can just stick your hook through between a couple stitches. It will go through something. So just single crochet through something. Chain 1, put a single crochet back in the same place. And this is just weird, but it works. You're basically creating a double-sided piece of fabric. You're just going to stick your hook through something 4 times across the top. It does not have to be perfect. It does not even have to be neat. The actual act of single crocheting will neaten it up for you. And you see how there's just a little bit of thickness there? So you're making a double-sided piece of fabric. Chain 1, put a single crochet in that same little spot, and put a single crochet in the same spot as that first one. Chain 1 and slip stitch to your first single crochet. This does not have to be perfect at all, but you should end up with something that looks, well, something like that. Leave a long tail, snip your yarn, fasten off, grab your yarn needle, thread up your tail, and stick your yarn needle into the middle, so just through some of these stitches, and get it to come out the middle, so somewhere in the middle. And now squeeze your bow right in the middle, nice and tight, as tight as you can. Wrap your yarn around it fully once and pull tightly. Wrap it again and pull tight, wrap it again and pull tight, wrap it again and pull tight. Make sure you wrap 5 or 6 times, pulling nice and tightly, because you want that middle piece to be squished and sort of tightly pinched into a, well, into a bow shape. Flip it over, take your yarn, and it's still attached to your yarn needle. Run your yarn needle underneath some, not necessarily all, because it should be so tight it's difficult to do. and knot. So just create a knot back there, nice and tight. Pull it as tight as you can without snapping your yarn, and it should stay in place. Then you can grab your kitty, and with that same yarn, decide what ear you want to put it on, and just pick up some stitches at the bottom of the ear on the one side, not all the way through because you don't want this to show through, and sew your bow to your kitty's ear. Put in a few stitches, put in a few more if it's for a little person, and that's the bow. Then you can stick the rest of the yarn into the ear, or the body I should say, or into the inside of the bow, and just weave in your excess. Okay, arms are on, ears are on, tail is on, bow is on. That's all the major parts. Now for the small details. We're going to put on Kitty's face. Kitty's face is exactly the same for either of the little amigurumi, the only difference being that there's a star on one. So we're going to start with the eyes, and you're going to want to thread up your black embroidery floss. I like to take my eyes and sort of place them carefully on the front of my toy that I'm making and decide whereabout I want them. Kitty usually has fairly widespread eyes, so I'm going to sit them in the upper middle part of her face, fairly widespread apart. And I'm going to be using this same black embroidery thread for several of her features. And I want all my knots to be on the inside of my stuffed toy. So I'm going to take my yarn, or my hook, my needle. I'm going to go through a space somewhere near the top of her head. I'm going to bring my needle out where I want her first eye to be. Now remember that you want your eye, wherever your eye is going to sit, you want to come out a little further to one side or the other, because you don't want to try and sew your eye down in one, right in the middle of where you want it, because otherwise it's going to shift one side or the other. So wherever you want your eye, bring your yarn and your needle out a little bit further to one side or the other. Leave some tail. So leave a little tail, because that's what you're going to tie your knots with ultimately at the end. First bead goes on. See, I've got a lot of yarn here, or I should say a lot of embroidery floss, because I'm going to try and do all of my black detailing with the same thread. So I don't want to have to cut a knot and cut a knot and cut a knot. I'm going to sew my eye on by just going under some of these stitches at the front of my face. I'm going to do this 3 or 4 times, however many times the thickness of my thread and the little sort of bead hole allows. And because I'm using the black on the white kitty face, it has the added nifty effect of giving her like a little eyeliner or a little eyelash. See that? So it sort of looks like she's got a little bit of an eyelash out the side. I'm going to do this 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, however many times I can. Then I'm going to, on my last run, so I think this will be it. Yep, that's getting pretty tight. I'm going to go in and bring my needle out to the side where I want my other eye to sit. So that's kind of where I want my other eye to sit. I'm going to come out just the other side of it. Then I'm going to sew that eye on. After I have sewn as many times as I can through that eyepiece, I'm going to put my needle through here, and I'm going to come out where I want my first whisker to start. So pretty much 1 stitch away on the same level as my eye. So I'm just going to sort of skip a stitch space, and I'm going to sew. I'm going to get caught up in her arm here. Get off. There we go. I'm going to sew 3 long whiskers. And my whiskers are going to be about 2, 2.5, maybe even 3 stitches wide. You can sort of see where I've put my hook, my needle there. And I'm going to put my needle in and bring it out just a little bit below where my first one started. I'm not going to pull tight because I don't want these sort of, I don't want the whiskers to distort the shape of her face. There we go. Good. Now, here is the slightly cumbersome part. You want to take your needle and you want to push it through to the other side where you want one of the other whiskers to start. So this is going to cause you to squish the face of your little amigurumi a little bit. But you can squish it back before you pull that last whisker taunt. Then you can grab your other yarn needle and just sort of move them around. Make sure they're in a place that you like. That's pretty good. And now you're going to repeat the same thing over here. So 2.5 stitches wide. Try to line up the ends with each other. Not that they have to be perfect, because cat whiskers aren't. But you want them to be visible. You don't want them to be too tight. And you only need 3. Now, the last thing that we need our black for is to give a little outline to the nose. So what I'm going to do is take my needle, come up through that same stitch where I left my first little bit of yarn. I'm going to try and make sure it's the same little hole. There we go. Up we go. Don't pull taunt. Give a little bit of slack on that and just take my needle right out. I'm going to loosen up those whip stitches so that I don't tighten up her pretty little whiskers. Good. I've taken my needle off the black. Now I'm going to cut myself some yellow. Don't need very much yellow, just a little bit, because we're only doing a small amount of embroidery with it. I'm going to come in the opposite end of the face, so I want her nose to be sort of in between her eyes and just a bit below them, so not too far below, kind of like right about here. So I'm going to just put my needle through this little space, come out just to the side of where I want my nose piece to start. Oh, that looks a little wide. That's better. Leave some of the embroidery floss out, because that's what I'm going to create my knot with. And then I'm going to make short whip stitches across about 1 stitch width in the middle of the face of my kitty. Try not to get caught up on her arm. I'm going to do this 3, maybe 4 times, depending on how thick your embroidery floss is. You don't want it to be too big a nose, because she doesn't have a very big nose. It's sort of a sweet little nose. If it's thin, make it a few more, because you want it to at least be filled in. You want that to be a yellow looking nose. You don't want to see the white of her face through it. Then come back out through the same place. Try not to pull too tightly, because you don't want to tighten up. You don't want any of the stitches to be any tighter or any looser than the other ones. Knot your 2 ends together. You can trim this down a little bit if you like. You don't need all of that embroidery floss sort of left over, but make sure you knot at least 2 times. Trim it if you want, and pull the rest of it inside the body of your amigurumi. And you can poke that knot through and grab it with the rest of your needle. Once that's buried, you can pick up that long black tail that's left, thread up your darning or your embroidery needle once more. Go back down through that same space, so hold that one end out of the way, back down through that same space. You're trying not to split any of your yarn. Come out at the side of your nose, so right at the side of your little nose. Go in the other side, so you're going to sort of do like just like you did with the yellow, but try to keep that black running across the top of your yellow nose. Put your thumb on it if you have to, and guide it into place. And run 1 across the bottom. Give it a little pinch, make it small and cute. And then back out through that top space. You can trim your yarn now and knot that, weave the ends back in. If you're got the same yarn, or it should say the same embroidery floss color for the star you're sewing on, you can grab that, sew your star on. You can also use thread if you want. You can use this same embroidery floss if you want. It's entirely up to you. Let's talk about tutus. So you can go ahead and sew on the star, and we're going to get to her tutu next. Okay, a tutu. There's a little bit of sewing involved here. Not a lot. Pretty simple stuff. Grab your kitty. Grab your chosen ribbon, and you can use any ribbon you want. Just remember, you don't want it to be too wide. And wrap it around kitty. So it'll go over the tail, under the arms. Doesn't have to be tight, just until you get all the way around to the beginning. Take that spot, and then you can eyeball it. You want to go 2 times, 3 times, and a little bit. Snip it. My recommendation is that you use ribbon that is not really easily unthreadable. Like it doesn't want to fray on you. But if you totally fall in love with some ribbon that tends to be kind of fray, tends to want to fray, just fold it under and hem the ends first. It'll make your life a lot easier in the end. So yeah, now you want to thread up your your embroidery floss needle, and you can grab embroidery floss that's the same color, or you can grab embroidery floss that's purple to match her dress, or black, whatever color you want. Maybe you want to use something bright screaming pink because you want it to sort of stand out. Whatever you like, it's entirely up to you. Thread up your embroidery needle and we'll get going. Okay, you want to knot up the end of your thread, and if you're hemming sort of the edge of your ribbon, go ahead. If you're not, because it doesn't fray that much, then don't worry about it. And then you're going to, so I'm just make sure I'm on the right side here. You're going to take your needle and about 1 inch along, maybe ½ inch, poke it through. And then poke it through, and then poke it through, and poke it through. Every ½ inch or so, you're going to poke your needle through. Notice I'm doing it close to the top, but not right at the top, because I want a little bit of extra ruffle on the other side of my running stitch. And you're going to go ahead and do this the whole length of your ribbon. So you're basically creating a gather with a pretty wide stitch. You'll find you're at the end pretty quickly. And I also went ahead and hemmed up my other side, so that is why that is already hemmed. Pull your thread all the way through, and then you want to just sort of evenly space it all out. Now it's going to flip around on you, and it's not all going to stay on the right side. Don't worry about it. You can fix all this when you've wrapped it around your kitty. So I'm going to try and just sort of evenly space it all out. And good. Then I'm going to take one end, lay it across the back near sort of the top of the dress color of my kitty, bring it under one arm and under the other arm, over top of the tail, and then I'm just going to make sure that I've got it mostly taut around my kitty. Doesn't have to be too taut, but I want to make sure that both my ends are aligned. Now this is a bit tricky, so if you're getting, it's a bit fussy and slippery, don't worry, just grab your 2 ends, pull, make sure that it's pretty much tight to your kitty, and then sew your 2 ends together. So just a couple of little stitches, doesn't have to be really tight. You can go back and finish it, like fix it better later. You just want it to sort of stay in a circle on your cat. There. Now, you're going to go around the outside of your kitty and fix the ruffles. So you want to make sure that they are all kind of facing the right way, that there's a little bit of ruffle across the top of your running thread. And don't worry, it's still going to move around on you. That's okay. You just sort of want to get it mostly in place before you start sewing it down. And there, that's starting to look good. Now I want this seam to be kind of at the back. So I want Kitty's skirt to be at the back here. That's starting to look good. Okay. Now, you still have your thread and your needle. You're going to take your needle, go through the top of the tutu, into the cat, so into the dress part of the cat, come back out through your tutu, picking up some of that ruffle, and then you're going to do that all the way around your cat. So you're going to just continue to make sure that your ruffle's all in the same place. It's not sliding around. It's over the top of your tail. It's under your little kitty's arm. And you're going to lay your little ruffles flat as you go. And you're going to sew right through the top of this little ruffled skirt. So grab a piece, pick up a piece of the cat, and do a whip stitch or a running stitch. You can backtrack a little bit. You can stop after every single stitch and make sure you've got skirt kind of lying where you want it to. Always make sure that you stop, back up, take a look at what you're doing. Make sure you haven't used up too much of the ruffle and that you've still got ruffle running around the outside of your kitty. And keep going. And you're going to go around twice just to make sure that you've gotten it all, that it's all sewn down nice and tightly. And what you're going to have at the end is something that looks like this. So it looks like she's got a little belt kind of running around the outside of her tutu. And because I've gone around twice, I've made those stitches nice and tight, and her tutu sticks out the bottom. So that's all you're going to do to finish. Run it around, go around twice, make sure you've gone through all of the top of your tutu so that it's sewn down to your cat nice and firmly. You can tug on it and it's not going to move. Then just knot off, weave your tail into the rest of your cat, and your kitty is all done. Once you've got your tutu sewn down nice and tight and it's not going to move anywhere, you can do a little extra embroidery on the back if you want. Sew your two ends together just so it's a complete and rounded skirt. You're finished. There you go. Rocker Hello Kitty, ready to rock out in her punk show, or traditional Hello Kitty. I love both. And there we go, a trio of Hello Kitties. This is the latest in our Pocket Pet collection. I hope you've had fun doing this series along with me. And this also brings us to the end of 2015. We will see you very soon in the new year for a whole lot more fun, and don't worry, there's lots more Pocket Pets to come. Everybody, have a wonderful, safe, happy, and crafty holiday season. And if you make yourself a Hello Kitty, or two, or anything that you see here on the Jayda InStitches show, make sure you post me pictures. You can post them to me on Google+, or Instagram, or Pinterest, or even over at my Etsy shop, and I will be sure to see them if you tag me at Jayda InStitches. Also, on our website, JaydaInStitches.com, we've got lots of free patterns, tricks and tips, lots of fun. So make sure you check that out if you're looking for more things to do. And like I said, there's some nifty patterns there, not necessarily ones we've done on the show. So if you're looking for more Jayda InStitches fun, definitely check out the workshop page. And that is it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have friends that are crafty, tell them about the show and make sure they subscribe too. We want to grow the Jayda InStitches family because we want everybody to enjoy crochet as much as we do. Have a wonderful, safe, happy holiday, everybody, and we will see you again very soon in the new year. Bye!